Good evening, everybody, and welcome to, what month is this? August, right? August, Azure Cloud Native User Group. Thank you all for joining us. Tonight, we're delighted to welcome Alpa, who you'll see in just a second, and she's going to talk to us tonight about event-driven workflows with products such as Azure Data Factory, Logic Apps, and Functions. So really looking forward to tonight's session. So it's been a while with life and chaos and the universe. It's been a while since I've been on one of our monthly user groups, so it's good to be back. Robert, how are you tonight?
I'm doing good. I'm having dinner, so I'm happy. Well, I got some dinner in me, so I got some food in me, so I'm happy now.
That's okay. You'll be off camera shortly. You can finish your dinner.
Don't want to have like a hangry Robert running around. But luckily, I'm not steering the show today, and it's good we have Alpa on.
Yeah, I'm in the driving seat tonight as long as I remember what to do. So first up, we'll get Robert to read the code of conduct to us, and then we will bring our guest and speaker on tonight, and then we'll get on with the show.
Yeah, sure. So as per usual, we have a code of conduct, and we just ask everyone to be aware of others, be friendly, patient, welcome, respectful, be open to all questions and viewpoints, be understanding of differences, and as always, be kind and considerate to others. It makes sense, these rules. I hope it makes sense to you as well. Over to you, Carl.
Super. So with no further ado, we're just going to bring Alpa out, say hello, and get on with the show. Hi, Alpa. How are you?
Hi, all. I'm good. Thank you. And you?
Oh, very well. Thank you. Welcome to Azure Cloud Native. Great to have you on. Looking forward to your talk tonight. Do you want to introduce yourself to our listeners, watchers?
Yeah. Hi, all. I'm Alpa Buddhabhatti, and I'm working as Azure consultant at Cluster Reply. And I have around 12 years experience in Microsoft technology. And currently, I'm working on Azure Cloud side. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. We do love Azure around here, hence the name of the group. So without too much more chat, I'm going to bring your slides up, and I'm going to drop Robert and myself off the screen because we're not the focus tonight. And you can push on. If there's any questions, please drop them in the chat, and one of us will jump into the stream and ask your question for you. Okay? Here we go.
Yep. Shall I start now? Yeah. Okay. Hi, all. Thank you and welcome to my session, a case study data-driven workflow using Azure Data Factory, Azure Logic Apps, and Azure Function here at Azure Cloud Native. Purpose of this session is to provide you a very quick overview of these 3 Azure services, which you can use in your data-driven workflow. So let's start with myself. As you know now, but I would like to give you a link information. So end of the session, you will find the presentation and code in here in Git repository. And you can find me LinkedIn as well if you have any query regarding this session later on or something else regarding Azure. So now let's start with today's agenda. Today's agenda is divided into 4 main parts. So in first 3 parts, we're going to these 3 Azure services, which is very quick overview. And in last part, we're going to see a demo using these 3 Azure services. So let's start with first one, Azure Data Factory overview. So what is Azure Data Factory? So Azure Data Factory is a cloud-based data integration service that orchestrates and automates the movement and transformation of your data at a scale. It is also Azure Platform as a Service, and it's a serverless. Because of these 2 reasons, you don't need to worry about compute infrastructure like software installation, operating system, web server configuration, or implementing your monitoring tool or some similar like other things. Azure will handle it for you, so you can fully focus on implementation, and you can build it very quickly as well because of that reason. And because of these two above points, you only pay for what you have used. For example, you have a Azure Data Factory, and in your Azure Data Factory you have a pipelines. You have more than 100 pipelines or less than that. But if you are not executing it, then you won't get any charge for execution. However, you get a small amount of charge for storage which can be negligible. So it is a cost effective. And last but not least, it's a low code or no code solution. So you can very quickly build your pipeline by just drag and drop components, and you can deploy it in your production also very quickly. And so you can say that in Azure Data Factory, you can do data movements, data transformation, you can orchestrate your pipeline, you can automate your pipeline or workflow, and you do many things, and you can do it very, very quickly and very cost effectively. So now let's move into, if you need more information, then this is the link. So now let's see a key components of Azure Data Factory. If you would like to start your Azure Data Factory, then these five main key components are there. So let's start with first one, which is a linked services. So linked services is like a connection holder in SSIS. If you know SSIS, it's just a hold your connection strings. So it authorize your connection data source, so it can use by other component in your Azure Data Factory later on. Next one is data sets. It represents a metadata or a structure of your data or reference of your data. So it's, for example, if your link service is pointing to a REST API, then your data set is in form of the JSON file, JSON format. But if your link service is pointing to a Azure SQL Server, then your data sets it's represent in form of a table. So that is your data sets. So data sets can be in form of the file, folder, or a table. Third component is activities. So as we said, it's a no code or low code solution. But if you compare with any programming language or database language, then you have like a for each loop, for loop, or while loop, or if condition, or you declare your variables, or you use your variables. So if same thing you want to do in Azure Data Factory, then you have activities. So activities is a ready-made components like if activities, for each loop activities, or other Azure services activities. For example, Azure Machine Learning or Azure Function or Databricks, Azure Databricks. So those are the activities available. You just need to drag and drop them, and you need to connect them, and you need to set few properties of your activities. That's it. And then you have a pipelines. So in your pipeline, you can have activities which can be in logical, like parallel or sequential, and it's a logical group of your business outcomes. So once you have ready your pipeline, you need to run your pipelines, and triggers comes into picture. You can trigger your pipeline various different way. So if you just don't want to run it, then you can click on debug button, then you can run your pipeline as well. But if you would like to schedule your pipeline, or you would like to run your pipeline based on some condition happen, then you can use a trigger. You can have a various trigger formats. You can use like time based triggers, like specific time arrives and your pipeline will execute. Or you can use like when file arrives or deletes from your blob storage, at that time also your pipeline can execute based on your condition. Or you can create your own logic. You can use Azure Function, PowerShell, Logic Apps, or you can write down a code in a C# language or like that, and you can trigger Azure Data Factory pipelines. So at that time, it use Azure Data Factory SDK in your programming, in a programming language. You can call it, and then you can trigger your pipelines. You can write down a codes like that way. So these are the five main components in Azure Data Factory. So now let's move into next one. So now next topic is Azure Function. So let's see what is Azure Function. So I'm sure we all know about a function, because we write down a function in a database language or maybe in a programming language like C#, Python, or Java. It's a small piece of code. So when we say Azure Function, then let's see definition. So it is like a small piece of code in a Azure cloud. So that is called Azure Function. And Azure Function has a few characteristics. So first one is event driven. So when you have a function in a cloud, in Azure cloud, it has to be triggered by someone. Someone has to call it. So event driven, it's event driven and triggers comes into picture. So it has like timer trigger, it has HTTP trigger, and it has so many other triggers like blob triggers and queue triggers and like that. So based on that condition arrive, your Azure function will execute automatically. So that is a event driven. It is a serverless and a platform as a service. So again, here also you don't need to worry about software installation or web server configuration or like that. Azure will handle it for you, so you can very quickly build your Azure function, and you can deploy it and it execute in a Azure cloud. It's a scalable. So when demand comes, it scale up, and when it's demand down, it will be your resources will be down, so you won't get any charges because it's automatically, you can set it automatically scalable, and it's lightweight as well because it's a small piece of code. So these are the characteristic of Azure function, and you can see it's a symbol of Azure function is like that. So it's a three pieces, a code plus data plus event, and you can find more information in this link. So this is Azure function. Now let's see how it can be easily integrated with Azure Function. So for that, you have Azure Data Factory and you have Azure Function. So there are two different Azure services on Azure Cloud. So now in your Azure Data Factory in here, you have activity. As I said earlier, it has activity which you can use for other Azure services. So for that, you have here Azure Function activity. So you need to add here your functions endpoint and your methods and request body. That's it. So this way you will call your Azure function, and Azure function will execute and it will return a result to your Azure Data Factory bags. So let's see why I need Azure function in my solution, data integration solution. So there are few more reasons. So for example, I have Azure Data Factory, but I would like to call a pipelines dynamically, child pipeline dynamically. So at the moment, this facility is not available in Azure Data Factory. So that's why I have created Azure function which run a child pipeline dynamically. So that is a one reason. Another reason is like, for example, at the moment in Azure Data Factory, you don't have a sync as XLS. You don't have you can't save as XLS format. So if you really needed that, then you can create Azure function which can do a transformation and it can convert into a XLS file in a sync format, because destination is not, sync is not available in at the moment in XLS formats in Azure Data Factory. So there are the two main reasons, and I have a few more scenarios as well which I'm going to show you later on this demo. So for that, I have used Azure function, which can easily do that specific job and come back return into Azure Data Factory. So third one is Azure Logic Apps. So Azure Logic Apps is again a cloud-based integration service for creating and running automated workflows that integrate your apps, data, service, and a system. So if you want to see symbol of that, then it's look like this, and you can get more information using these links. So this is Azure Logic Apps, and Azure Logic Apps has around 200 custom connectors is available, so you can easily integrate Logic Apps with for example, sending mechanism for SMTP, Outlooks, SendGrids, and Gmail or like that. You can use like Twitters, Twilio, and so many connectors available. So if your connector is not available, you can create your own custom connector. That is so powerful Logic Apps is, and it's low code or no code as well. So now let's see how you can integrate with Azure Data Factory. So for that, you have Azure Data Factory, and in your Azure Data Factory you have a pipelines, and inside your pipelines you have activities, which is a web activity, and then you have Azure Logic Apps, which is, so these are the two different Azure services. So now I would like to call these logic apps into my Azure Data Factory. So you can do it via activities. So here you have a web activity. So you can very easily call your logic apps in Azure Data Factory by just using the URL. You can see that, and that's it. You just use your logic apps URL in here, which I'm going to show you that property as well. And then logic apps will execute. Logic apps will do a specific task for you, and then it come back to your Azure Data Factory back. So in my scenario, I have used logic apps because at the moment in Azure Data Factory, you don't have a facility for customize your email. However, you have that functionality, but it's not a customized one. So you can set up alerts and alert will execute, but which is not a user friendly. So that's why I have a use Azure Logic Apps to generate a customized email. So this way you can use that and you can do it very quickly and very easily. I'm going to show you during the demo that as well. So now let's see a demo with Azure Function, Azure Logic Apps, and Azure Data Factory. So before we see a demo, let's see a problem statement that why I need these three all together. So we had a client, existing client, and that client had a system and they have a following features. So they have a data-driven system which do a data movements and data transformation. It has also image resizing facility. It generate a manifest file. It's like summary of the file, and it has ethics and record counts and file names and many more things. And it has a customized email functionality. So if I want to migrate this application into my Azure cloud, then this is a new design. So here for data movements and data transformation, we can use Azure Data Factory. For image resizing, we can use Azure Function because at the moment it's not possible in just using the Azure Data Factory alone. For generating a manifest file, again here we use Azure Function because this is not possible at the moment using only Azure Data Factory. And customize email functionality. Again, we use the logic apps here because Azure Data Factory at the moment not able to create a customized email. So this is a new system in second part, and this is the existence old system. So now let's see a higher level design of that. So I have two demos for that. So first one is here. So you can see that I have a blob storage, and in my blob storage I have a CSV file, and my container name is file days in container, and my sink or destination is Azure SQL table. So I would like to move this file into Azure SQL table. I have used the key vaults here which hold the secrets, and it provides the security as well. So for example, if I have a three system and those three system are using a blob storage or Azure SQL Server, then I don't need to go to each individual system and change a connection string if it's changed. I can do it in one place, which is a key vaults. So I change the secrets in my key vaults, and all system, whoever is using that SQL Server or blob storage, they can automatically get the latest secrets from a key vault. So that is a one reason. And another reason is provide the security because it's a hidden, so you don't know which SQL Server I'm using in my Azure Data Factory unless and until you go in your key vaults and see the secrets. Then I have Azure Function, which do manifest, which generate a manifest file for demo 1. And I have Azure Logic Apps, which send the customized email when my pipeline is success or fail or it's generated reports. And then I have Azure Data Factory, and in Azure Data Factory I have pipelines. So now this pipeline is read a data from my blob storage, which is a file days in container, and is looking for CSV file. and it's moved that file into a Azure SQL Server. And then once it's finished, file movements is finished, um, Azure function will execute. And for that, I have Azure function activity in my pipeline. And that pipeline is calling this Azure function. And then it's generate a manifest file. And then it save that file into a blob container. I have used the same container, but you can have a different container as well. So this Azure function's job is to generate a new manifest file and save that file into this blob container. So this is a demo one. Oh, sorry, I think I need to show you logic apps as well. So end of this pipeline execution, we need a customized email as well. So for that, my pipeline has a web activity, and this web activity called Azure logic apps. And logic apps will execute functionality, and it send an email, and then it's come back here, and my execution is finished. So this is the very high level design of a demo one. So now let's see here. So before I'm going to show you demo, I would like to show you each resources. So first resource is the key vaults, and these key vaults have a secrets here, and these are the 4 secrets. But for my demo, I need 3 secrets. One is a blob storage connection string, Azure SQL Server connection string, and a function apps, because I am using Azure Function. So this function key is hold the function key of my function, Azure Function. And these are the secrets. You can very quickly create secrets by clicking here. And that's just the name, and you can see it here. It's just a name. You give suitable name and just a connection string or whatever value you want to provide here, which is a correct one if it's connection string. So if it's blob storage, then access key, and if it's Azure SQL Server, then you can have a connection string. So this way you create a secrets, and this is a very important thing. If you would like your Azure Data Factory to have these secrets, then you need to add here access policy by just clicking here, and you giving them permission to access a secrets. And here you need to select your Azure Data Factory. Otherwise, you won't able to access your secrets. So you need to give your Azure Data Factory name. For example, this one, which I already have it. So you just need to select this, and then you need to click add here. So this way you need to give a access policy, so your Azure Data Factory can have access of your key vaults. So this is the things. So that way easily you can set up your key vaults for Azure Data Factory and other data sources as well. So now let's go to next one. So next I have Azure SQL Server. So at the moment it is empty because I have deleted recently all tables. But once I execute my pipeline one, you will see here 2 tables or how many file I have. Based on that you have table here. So this is my blob storage, and in my blob storage I have filed this in container, and at the moment it has a 2 CSV file, but it can have a more than 1, 2 or 100 or like that. And my pipeline will execute it, read each and every file and create a table in a database, and then it generate a manifest file in here. So you will see here one more file once I execute a demo one. And this is the Azure Function app, and you can see that in my function app I have 4 functions. So this is a create manifest function, and this is the normal function. So if you want to run your function here using portal, you can see that here code and test. So that means here you can execute your function. I think it's a little bit slow. Okay. So here you can execute this function. At the moment it's a bit slow, but you can have here link, this button will execute. Here you can see that you can monitor your Azure function. As I said, you don't need to worry about monitoring. So here you can see that you will see history as well. It's a success or fail, and if it's failed, then you need to see why it's fail as well here when you click here. So it's give a reason as well that I haven't specified the parameter name as a string. And here is application insight. So it give you more information as well. And this is a function key. This is the important things as well. So if you would like to allow this function to execute in your Azure function, Azure Data Factory, then you need to provide this function key by just clicking here. You need to copy it and you need to use that key in there as well. And here you can see that I have manifest function as well. Okay, I think I forget one thing, which is in overview. Yeah, I haven't started this. To save a course, I have stopped it. So now we can monitor it here. It take a few seconds. So if now I click here, you will see that these are now enabled, other buttons is available. So we can test it online as well. Yeah, see, you can see it now. And you can click here, and I need to specify here name property. And here you can run as well, and you can see it gave a successful result as well, and you return the whatever I specified name as well. And if it's failed, then you will see it here, or you can monitor it and see it why it's failed if you click here as well. So this way you can run your Azure function using Azure portal as well. You can copy here URL if you like to run it in your Postman or in local machine. You can copy this one and you can use it in Postman, and you can provide same way like name parameter pass, and it will execute. And yeah, so you can see here, you can monitor it and everything, you can do it in portal as well. So this is overview of the Azure function as well. And now let's see here, logic apps. So this is a logic apps. Logic apps, you can do drag and drop as well. So for that, you can see it logic app designer here. So these are the logic apps design as well. And if you'd like to see a code behind this, then you can see here as well. So this is the code. So if you want to deploy your logic apps via CI/CD pipeline, for that you're creating projects in your Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code, then you can use this code and you can slightly modify it if it's needed. And then you can use it as automated deployment as well. And so let's see here in design as well. So this is logic apps and it has a trigger. So logic app must have a one trigger, one and only one trigger, and I have used HTTP triggers. So this is the URL which you need to copy and use into your Azure function. I said you earlier as well that you need a URL. So these are the URL you need to use, and you need to pass this required information if you would like to use it. So this is a payroll as well. That's it. And then here you can initialize your variables. So I have initialized the email body as well. And here I have used if condition because I want to send an email as a success or fail, or you can do two ways, successful, fail, or generate report as well, because this is not having attachment, but some pipeline may be need to send email is with attachment as well. And here you can see that I have used a Gmail connector as well. So I'm sending email to myself, but you can parameterize it as well. So that's it in both case. And here is if in a case it's failed then. So this way you can create and see your logic apps as well. And you can run your logic apps here as well if you want to trigger it now, or it will automatically trigger via Azure Data Factory as well. And let's see here now. Okay, overview as well. And once you run your logic apps by anyone, maybe by Postman in your local machine or Azure Data Factory or someone else, you see here overview, and here you see run history as well. And you can see why it's fail if it's fail. So this one was fail. And here you can see that why it's fail as well. This green marks means success and red means is fail, like here. And you can see that it's failed because of unauthorization. So I have provided new connector and now it's working. So you can see it here, because now it's successful. So that is a logic apps. And now let's see Azure Data Factory. So this is my Azure Data Factory. And in my Azure Data Factory, I have two pipelines. But let's start with link service. So I don't need this. So this is my link service. So I have a key vault. So I have key vault link service which pointing to that specific key vaults. I have Azure SQL database link service because I want to access database and I want to create a tables there. And you can see that I have connected with key vaults. And this is my key vault link service. And this is my secrets. Who knows which SQL server they need to use, which database they need to use. So looking into this, you can find out that which table or which database we are using or which server we are using, because we are using secrets and it's the secrets know everything. So that is one thing. Same way I have Azure Function, and this is my function URL, and I'm using keywords as well, and it's using this secrets. The key is there. And same way for a blob storage as well. I think I can change it like this way. So this way you can test it by just clicking into here, your blob storage as well, and you can save as well. But at the moment I don't need. Let's discard this. So this is the link service. You can see code here by just clicking here. Behind the scene is generates JSON code for you automatically, but you don't need to worry about that at all. And you can see who have used your link service as well. So this is the link service and this is a manage tab. So here you can manage your Azure Data Factory resources. And here you can monitor your Azure Data Factory resources. So if it's success or fail, so you can see that it's a fail. This red means fail. This green means success. And if it's fail, then you can see why it's fail as well. It gave your error message here, and you can see why it's fail as well, and it's give you a reason, because container name wasn't available there, it was missing. So this way you can monitor it. And now let's go to here. So this is my pipeline for demo 1. So in my pipeline I have a metadata activity. Metadata activity looking into that particular file this in container. I have used parameter to dynamically operate my pipeline. So for example, I want same pipeline work for another business outcome as well. So that's why I have used a parameter. So this pipeline can work for more than one business outcomes. So it's looking for particular containers and is finding the how many CSV file they have, and it's giving to a for each loop using this way. Here you can see that it's giving this activity, which is previous activity. I need output and I need all children's, like how many items they have. And then here you can see that I have a for copy activity. So copy activity work for how many items have in that container. If that container have one file, then it's execute for one time. But if they have 100 files, then this copy activity execute for 100 times. So it's copy a data from source to sink, from that blob storage to a Azure SQL Server. And it's again here I have used a parameterization and expression. So one copy activity work for more than one file. It can work for 100 files as well, even though they are different file. And it's create 100 tables. So I'm not specifying hard coded one. So I'm creating table name based on item name. So here I have used expression as well. this concat is expression in here, and I'm just using this item.name, which is a current item in your for each loop, and I'm concatenating with .csv. And here I'm appending a few readers because I need to call my Azure function, and for that I need item name, and I need a count as well, how many row they have in that particular file. And I have used append variable because if I have more than one file, then I need that list for more than one file. So if I have 100 file, then append variable have a result of 100 files. So like file name, pipeline concatenation with account as well on that particular file. And once all file has successfully moved into Azure SQL Server, this manifest function will execute and it generate a new file and it save into that blob storage. It's doing all thing in one, and then it send the email. So here you can see that it has this is a link service which hold the connection sync of Azure function, and this is a function I'm calling, and its method is post. And you can see that here I'm passing a value. I'm passing this append variable as array value, and it's looking for this container. I have a hard coded here, but you can parameterize as well. And once it's successfully execute, if it's success, then it's generate send a email, but if it's failed, then it's generate a fail email. So you can see that here. So here, this is a web activity and it's calling the Azure Logic Apps. So it's using this URL as I showed you earlier as well in a Logic Apps URL, which is this one. So it's use that URL in here, and then it's sorry, that's it, and it's passing the all requirements parameters. So these are the requirement things like pipeline names, factory name, and those are the things which you can see it in here as well in a Logic Apps. And that's it. Those two information I'm passing from my Azure Data Factory to call my Logic Apps. And for Azure function, it's similar one, but it's like this one. It's like using the function name, and here is a message body. That's it. So in my pipeline, I have called Azure function and Azure Logic Apps. And if I click here, before that, I just would like to show you that here I have only two files. So if it successfully run, I have here three files, which is one manifest file. And in my table, I have two new tables because I have two files there. So let's see if it's worked successfully or not. So it's looking for file container. So I'm concatenating with days in a here. So it's looking for file days in container. So you can see it here. In my data set, I'm concatenating here with days in. So it's looking for this because I need file days in, file days staging, and file days only file. So that need three formats in my container. And so for I have a two business outcome, then they should follow the same standard. That's why I have a concatenation in here, and I'm passing original container name, but inside I'm doing some concatenation. So I think I have just ran it. Let's see here. I think it's this pipeline. So you can see that it ran very quickly. And here you can see that results as well. So you can see that this is the file, parameter is file, but it's looking for file days in container. Here you can see that. So it has two files, cars.csv and events.csv. So my for each loop work for two times because here you can see that count is 2. and it's scoping for blob storage to the Azure SQL Server. And here you can see that many information like queuing time, transfer time, and like that. And so same way, if this is icon which help you to find out that. And here you can see in and out parameters as well. So this is for event file as well, and this is for cars.csv file. You can see it here. And append variable, append the files and count as well here. And so it's 2-time execute because I have 2 files. So if you have 100 files, then you have 100 append variable and 100 copy activities. And at the end of the for each loop execution, this Azure function will execute. And here you can see that this is the function name, this is a method name, and this is the body, which is nothing but append variable results. And it has a successfully generate, so that's why it's a greens here. And you can see that it has a send email as well. So this is the email body as well. This is logic app URL, and this is a required parameter in that logic apps to send an email. So if we're going to see now here, and if I refresh, you see there is a one file will generate, which is a manifest file. This is the file .chk extension. And what it do, it will summarize this. So it's copy the file with a count, and it's give a tag and some more information as well. So if I open here, so this is the file. So here you can see that it summarizes a number of files. So I have 2 files, so I have 2 records, as well as a count in that file, as well as this is a tag and this is a modified it. So this tag is nothing, but if I open this file, this is the one where this is a tag. So this is I'm accessing. So if I copy here, because every time you modify, your tag will be different. So that's why it's like unmodified file. Make sure this that it is a unmodified. So you can see that same way give that tag of this is for events file like that. So it generate a file here. It generates a new file here. And if I see here in SQL table, if now refresh, you will see you have 2 tables here, because I have 2 files. These 2 tables I have generated because I have 2 files. So if I have 100 tables, then it generate 100 files, and it generate one more file in blob storage, which is a manifest file. So this is the demo 1. Now let's go back to presentation for a demo 2. So this is the one we execute, and here we have explicitly used Azure Function in our Azure Data Factory pipeline. But as you know that Azure Function has a different kind of event trigger. So if you have a blob trigger, then you don't need to specify Azure Function in your pipeline because it's a blob trigger. So it will automatically execute your code, Azure Function, when something happen in your blob storage, when file is created or deleted. So for that, let's see a demo 2. So here I have a same container, but in this container, this time I have a star.csv file, and plus I have a .jpg file as well. And my pipeline is looking both file as well. So this is my Azure Data Factory pipelines. This is Azure Key Vaults. This is a blob storage, another blob storage, same blob storage, but container is output container. And then here you can see that I have another container, which is input container. And this is my Azure SQL Server. So this is my source, and these are my sinks, different sinks. So now my Azure Data Factory pipeline function also here, but we are not directly calling function. It's behind the scene. When this blob container have a JPG file, this function will execute, and then it's move a file into JPG here in another container. So now my pipeline will execute, and it's read a CSV file and JPG file from blob storage, which is a file this in container. It's move.jpg file into a input container, and it's move.csv file as a table in Azure SQL table. So this is a one part. So as soon as file arrives, which is a JPG file, and it's in this input container, this function will trigger automatically because it has a blob trigger. And it's resize your image and it store the result into another container, which is output container. So it save here two different files, medium size file and small size file. So it read here one JPG and it's created two new JPG file here, small size and medium size. So this is a demo too. So now let's go back to here in Azure Data Factory. So for that, let's see a container first. So we don't need this container. Let's move this container, these files, because for second demo also I have used the same container. So I'm now uploading here JPG file. And if I upload, I think, okay, car.csv file is already there. So it create modify a table. That's it. So these are the three files in my file in container, two JPG file and one CSV file. And in my CSV file, I have two records. So for that, I have a file name here, and that file is these two files. So if I have three records here, then I should have three JPG files. If I have 100 records in this file, then there should be 100 JPG file in outside container. So now let's see, and let's see in and out container. So at the moment, my input container is empty, but as soon as file arrives here, Azure function will execute immediately, and it's resize image and it plays image into output container. So at the moment, empty output container. So now let's go and execute. Let's duplicate this. So I am interested into input container. So at the moment is empty. So now after execution of demo, you will see here image file as well as you see image file here with two different sizes. So if you have one JPG, you have two files here. If you have two JPG, here you have four files. So now let's execute second demo as well. So this is a second demo. And so here you can see that same thing. I have a lookup which look that particular blob container. And here initially it's looking into CSV file. It's passing the each record, like record says CSV file have two records. So it's passing here two records in for each loop. For each loop, copy that two files, JPG file into binary copy. You can see that here. Sorry. And it's moving the JPG file into input container of the blob storage. So it's used here binary sync. If I open this, then you will see that it's a binary copy. This is a binary one. And here it's finally CSV file inserting into a Azure SQL table. So you can see that my sync is Azure SQL database. And then it's success or fail based on that it send an email. But you can see that I haven't used my Azure function here, but behind the scene is using that. So if I execute this, so while it's executing, I can show you something if it's possible. Oh, it's a quick as well. So yeah, so you can see that lookup is looking, and here is a result of lookup. So it looking for that file, CSV file, car.csv file, and it has two records: customer ID, car type, and file name. And this is the file name. And so for loop executed two times, and here what is doing is just doing a binary move from image file, from blob storage file this in container to a input container. So if I refresh now here, input container, you see there are 2 files here. So as soon as file arrived here, if you see output here, if I refresh here, you will see 4 files. So this is done by Azure Function behind the scene. So you can see
But
that, yeah,
sorry to
yeah,
disturb your flow. We have a question from Bjorn.
uh-huh.
So we're talking a lot about Azure Data Factory here. He asks, will Azure Data Factory replace BizTalk, or do you think BizTalk could continue forever?
Uh, I am very sorry. I'm not working on a base talk, so I don't have a much idea about it. But I think Azure Data Factory is a future. So yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. So here you can see that it's generated 4 files, and you can see that it medium, and it's give this name as well, concatenating with MD, and this is a medium size, and this is a small size, but you can make it very different, small, very small as well, but I have slightly different because I gave resolution. And let's close this, and you can see that it successfully copy as well this CSV file as well in table as well. So if table is already there, then it's modified, otherwise it's create a new table. But our case table is already there, so it modified this table, but it not creating table at the moment because table is there. And it's send email as well because it's successful. And you can see that in my Gmail I will have an email as well. These 2 email I got it from Logic Apps. So let's go back here. So I think with that, let's go back to here. So we have seen that demo, and here Azure Function, we are not calling in Azure Data Factory. It's running behind the scene. And so if you want to use this demo in your environment, then you need to create these resources. Like you need to create resource group, and then these all resources, 6 resources, you need to create them. And then you can use easily Git repo as well. So with that, I would like to conclude this session. So we have seen Azure Data Factory, which is a cloud-based data integration service. It's a no-code, low-code solution. It is Azure Platform as a Service. It's a serverless. You can use Azure Data Factory for a data movements, data transformation, for automation, and orchestrate your pipeline. And you can easily integrate Azure Data Factory with Azure Logic Apps, Azure Function, and many other Azure services as well. And it has more than 100 data sources available, so you can easily connect with different data sources as well. You can connect with other cloud services, you can use SMTP and those kind of data source. You can use um, other clouds, on-premise systems like Azure SQL Server, or Oracle or SQL Server, like that. Then we have seen Azure Function, which is a small piece of code in cloud, which is a very important part, and it's an integration solution as well. And you can easily integrate with other Azure services as well. And you can use it as like data integration, application integration, or IoT integration. It's also event driven like Logic Apps, and it's use a serverless compute as well. And you can choose your price based on consumption or fixed price, or like that. Or if you consume, then you need then. Yeah. And Azure Logic Apps, which again event driven like Azure Function. It is a no-code local solution. You can easily integrate with other Azure services as well. And Logic Apps you can use for so many things. You can even create your own converter as well, and it has a serverless engine as well. So then we have seen 2 demos. We use creating a manifest file using these 3 services, and we have at that time we have used Azure Function in Azure Data Factory using the Azure Function activity. And in second demo we have seen Azure Data Factory, Azure Logic Apps, and Azure Function, not directly but indirectly, because we have used a blob trigger in Azure Function. So Azure Data Factory is moving file from that container, and based on that blob container, Azure Function is automatically execute and resize the image. So that's it. With that, I would like to thank you for attending this session, and thank you for giving me this chance to present this session. And that's it. I'm now waiting for question.
All right, thank you, Alpa. We got a question in just before you were stopping, and it's Bjorn asking. Also, I'm wondering, in your experience, what is the stability or robustness of this architecture with ADF plus FA and LA? Any best practices or things we should avoid doing?
I think they are very easy to use, and you can use it very quickly because you're just setting few properties. So I think this is a very good architecture, and I'm using in our few client with our client demo as well, like client system as well. So yeah. Yeah. A best practice, like you try to use parameterization. So you can use the same thing, like same logic apps and same pipeline. You can create new pipeline for sending an email, and you can use him in for other pipelines as well. So you don't need to do the much things. So you can reuse them. So you can create a new child pipeline as well to send an email, and you can create a child pipeline to call your Azure function as well, and then you can use that pipeline in your other pipelines for different business outcomes, so you can reuse them. So it save your time in the case of maintenance and modification. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. We don't have any other questions, and I think it's a very thorough walkthrough of Azure Data Factory and adjacent services, and I think we got a good idea of how that works. The only thing that I'm wondering about myself, like I mentioned in the chat, I don't work with data, but I help data teams setting up infrastructure, and I've done a lot of Azure Synapse lately. How does because I know Data Factory and Synapse is kind of like, there's a very parallel type services, and it seems like they're kind of doing the same thing. And even for me, who doesn't know anything, just
Yeah.
looking at the dashboard is even very similar to me. I could very easily see it and think that it was Synapse. So what are the main differences between using Data Factory versus Synapse workspaces?
Actually, in Synapse, you have one component which is data integration, which is identical like Azure Data Factory, which is no code, low code solution. But if
Okay.
you like to do like a code like Spark code or notebooks or like that, then you can create a Synapse workspace, and you can start your doing that in that side. Because in Synapse has all in one, you can have a no code, low code solution, or you can write down your codes. It's giving us choice, and we can use like Python or SQL or like that. So
Yeah, I saw that there was a lot of things that you were doing that was looking kind of similar, but obviously it was more like the low code approach, where you have your dashboard where you can put in elements and do those kind of things. While I see mostly just code with things that are happening in Azure Synapse. So yeah.
So same thing like today demo, whatever I saw, you can do same thing. You can use same code in Synapse Analytics with our data integration area as well,
Yeah.
because they are exactly similar. But I think Azure Data Factory is little bit more, because Synapse still has few limitation. I think it's improving now. Like for SSIS related things, they have earlier it wasn't there, but now is there.
Yeah.
So like it's slowly is matching, but Azure Data Factory has little bit more than data integration in Synapse.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And I also saw, just looking through the documentation really quick, that there's also a possibility of using Azure Data Factory for one part and then having Synapse picking up some other parts and start doing other type of tasks. So you can, get them to work together as well.
Yeah.
I reckon.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. If there's no other question, and it looks like there isn't, then I'll just say thank you so much, Alpa, for giving us this session, and it was great. people seem to be enjoying it, and we're happy to have you on here again.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you
you
so
very much.
much. Thank you.
So I'll
And
wrap up the broadcast in just a second. Just a quick shout out for the next couple of sessions we have coming up. On Thursday, September 15th, we have Tom Kirkhoff joining us for a spotlight session on Kita. And then later on in September, on the 20th, so the following Tuesday, we have Christina Devochko, hopefully I pronounced that correctly, joining us to talk about preparing for using Kubernetes in production. So day 0 or day -1 Kubernetes. So it's sure to be an interesting session. Just to echo what Robert's already said, Alpa, thank you very much for a very interesting session. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
yeah,
Be safe.
thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.